The sky above the United States was no longer blue. It was a bruised purple, choked by the shadows of massive ships. These were not the flying saucers of old movies, nor the sleek cruisers of science fiction dreams. They were ugly, blocky shapes, like gray mountains floating in the air, indifferent to gravity. They belonged to an enemy that humanity had named the Architects. On the bridge of the USS Independence, the air was thick with the smell of burnt circuits and cold sweat. The ship was the pride of the American Navy, a massive carrier designed to project power across the globe. But today, it looked like a toy caught in a storm. Alarm lights bathed the crew in a harsh, pulsing red. Outside the thick glass windows, the ocean below was churning, thrown into chaos by the alien ships hovering above the water. Commander Jin stood at the center of the chaos. She was a woman of few words, her face a mask of concentration. She gripped the metal railing in front of her so hard her knuckles were white. She watched the main tactical screen, a large glowing table that showed the positions of the enemy fleet. There were 12 of the massive enemy ships arranged in a perfect circle over the eastern seaboard. "Report," Jin said. Her voice was steady, cutting through the noise of shouting officers and beeping consoles. Tactical Officer Kang tapped furiously at his keyboard. He looked tired. His uniform was stained with coffee, and his eyes were wide with fear. "They are charging their main weapons, Commander. Estimated time to impact is 10 minutes. Our railguns are online, but the previous volley did nothing. I repeat, nothing." Jin cursed under her breath. She looked at the damage report. The fleet had fired everything they had. They had launched missiles that cost millions of dollars each. They had fired hypersonic rounds from the railguns. They had even tried to jam the enemy communications. It was useless. The Architects had a shield technology that defied the laws of physics. It was a shimmering wall of energy that absorbed kinetic force and dissipated heat. When the missiles hit, they just vanished into a puff of harmless smoke. When the lasers struck, the light just bent around the enemy hulls like water flowing around a stone. "We need a new angle," Jing said, turning to the science station. "Dr. Park, give me options. Electronic warfare? Bioagents?" Dr. Park, the head science officer, shook his head. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. "Their systems are too advanced, Commander. Our hacking attempts bounce off their firewalls like pebbles off a tank. As for biological weapons, we can't get through their atmosphere shielding. We are trying to break down a steel door with a feather." The bridge fell into a heavy silence. The low hum of the ship's engine felt like a funeral dirge. They were the last line of defense for the coast. If the Independence fell, the cities behind them would burn. Millions of lives depended on this crew, and right now, they were out of options. Suddenly, the heavy blast doors to the bridge slid open with a hiss. A man stumbled in. He was not wearing a crisp uniform like the others. He was wearing a grease-stained jumpsuit, the kind worn by the engineers who worked in the lower decks. His name was Chief Engineer Du. He was an older man, with messy hair and a pair of thick goggles pushed up on his forehead. He was carrying a heavy metal case, dragging it across the floor with a loud scraping sound. "Commander," Du shouted, his voice cracking. He didn't wait for permission to speak. "You have to stop the bombardment. It's a waste of ammo." Officer Kang turned around, his face twisting in anger. "Chief Du, get back to the engine room. We are in the middle of a combat situation. This is not the time for your crazy theories." Du ignored him. He walked right up to the tactical table and dropped his metal case with a heavy thud. He flipped the latches and opened it. Inside was a device that looked like a mess of wires and lenses. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like a high school science project gone wrong. "Listen to me, Du," said Breathless. "I know how to break their line." Jin looked at the device, then at the engineer. She knew Du. He was brilliant, but he was also known for his strange ideas. He had once tried to power the ship's mess hall with coffee grounds. "Explain, Chief, quickly." "It's the shielding," Du said, pointing a grease-stained finger at the holographic enemy ships. "It's perfect. That's the problem. It adapts to whatever we throw at it. It sees a fast missile, it hardens. It sees a laser, it reflects. It's a reactive system. It needs input to work." "We know this," Kang snapped. "That's why we can't win." "No, you don't understand," Du said, pulling a data pad from his pocket and plugging it into the table. A schematic of his ugly device popped up on the main screen. The system needs a split second to analyze the threat to generate the counter frequency. If we hit it with a railgun, it reads the mass and speed and generates a counterforce. But what if we don't give it a threat to read? What if we just give it garbage? Jin frowned. Garbage? We are not fighting a landfill, Chief. Not literal garbage, Daw said, tapping the screen. Sensory garbage. My device, I call it the WAN projector. It sends out a hard light pulse, but it's not a laser. It's a constantly shifting chaotic wave. It changes color, frequency, and intensity 5,000 times a second. It's visual noise. It's a sensory seizure. The bridge crew stared at him. They looked confused. It's a giant flashlight? Kang asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You want us to shine a giant flashlight at the alien superweapons? Are you insane? It will blind them, Du shouted, losing his patience. Their sensors are designed to track threats. This will flood their inputs. It's like shining a strobe light into the eyes of someone with sensitive vision. It won't punch a hole in the hull, but it will scramble their targeting computers. It will blind their pilots. It will force their shields to try and adapt to a million different frequencies at once. The system will crash. Kang laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. Commander, this is ridiculous. We have the most advanced weapons on Earth, and he wants to use a disco ball. We are facing extinction, and he brings us a party trick. This is our only chance, Du yelled back. Your big guns aren't working. You have 5 minutes before they wipe Washington off the map. What do you have to lose? Jin looked at the countdown timer on the wall. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. She looked at the confident, arrogant shapes of the enemy ships in the sky. They weren't moving. They weren't afraid. They were just sitting there, waiting to execute the human race. They were so advanced that they didn't even consider humanity a threat. She looked back at Do's device. It looked pathetic. It looked like junk, but Do was a genius with light frequencies. He had redesigned the ship's running lights to save energy last year. He knew optics. Prepare the device, Jin said quietly. Kang spun around. Commander, you can't be serious. This is suicide. If we deploy that thing, we waste valuable power that could be used for engines or shields. Mr. Kang, Jin said, her voice turning cold and hard like steel. Look at the screen. We are already dead. The shields are at 40%. The railguns are empty. We are not surviving this by doing the same thing over and over. If Chief Du says he can blind them, then we blind them. Kang hesitated, his mouth opening to protest, but he saw the look in Jin's eyes. He slumped his shoulders. Yes, Commander, but I want it on record that I think this is stupid. Nodded, Jin said. Chief Du, get that thing online. Where do we deploy it? It's too heavy to mount on a drone, Du said, closing the case and lifting it with a grunt. It needs to be delivered manually. Someone has to fly a shuttle close to the lead ship and trigger it manually. The range is short. You want us to fly a shuttle right up to the enemy flagship? Kang asked, his disbelief returning. They will vaporize it before it gets within a mile. That's the thing, Du said, a glint of madness in his eyes. They won't see it as a threat. It's just a shuttle. It has no weapon signature. Their systems will ignore it. They are arrogant. They only shoot things that can hurt them. A slow shuttle with a box of lights? They will think it is a piece of debris or a desperate diplomat. Jin took a deep breath. This was the gamble of a lifetime. It was a desperate, foolish plan. It relied on the enemy being too proud to swat a fly. But looking at the aliens, she knew pride was their defining trait. They hadn't even changed formation since they arrived. Pilot Sue, Jean said into the ship's intercom. Report to the main hangar bay immediately. You have a mission. A young woman's voice crackled back, shaky but determined. Yes, Commander. On my way. Du grabbed his case and turned to leave. I need to go with her, Commander. I have to calibrate the lenses on site. If the frequency is off by even a fraction, it won't work. You will die, Chief, Jin said softly. Du smiled, a sad, tired smile. We're all going to die if I don't. At least this way, I get to see the look on their faces when the lights go out. With that, the chief engineer ran out of the bridge, the heavy metal case banging against his leg. Jen watched him go, praying to whatever god was listening that the stupid weapon worked. Kang, Jen ordered. Cease fire. Save all power for the engines and life support. We are going to move the Independence into a flanking position. If Sue and Du succeed, we need to be ready to strike." "Cease fire?" Kang asked, his fingers hovering over the console. "They will think we are surrendering." "Let them think whatever they want," Jin said, watching the gray ships in the sky. "Let them laugh. I want them laughing right up until the moment they burn." The bridge fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. It wasn't the silence of defeat, it was the silence of a held breath waiting for the plunge. The countdown timer ticked away. 3 minutes. In the hangar bay, pilot Sue was strapping herself into the pilot's seat of a small, unarmed shuttle. The ship was barely a tin can with engines. Chief Engineer Du squeezed into the back, strapping the metal case down between piles of spare wiring. "Is it gonna work?" Sue asked, her hands trembling on the controls. Du pulled his goggles down over his eyes and began connecting wires to the ship's power core. "Honestly, I have no idea. But I've seen these aliens fight. They are perfect. They are logical, and that is why they are going to lose. Logic doesn't know what to do with chaos." Sue nodded. She pushed the throttle forward and the shuttle groaned, lifting off the deck. The hangar doors opened, revealing the dark, smoking sky. "Squadron launch," Sue whispered. "Let's go blind some monsters." As the tiny shuttle shot out of the belly of the massive battleship, heading straight for the heart of the enemy fleet, the architects watched. Their superior sensors scanned the tiny craft. They analyzed its mass, its speed, and its energy output. It carried no explosives. It carried no heavy metals. It was slow and fragile. On the enemy bridge, a strange sound echoed. It wasn't a human sound. It was a distorted, digital noise. It was the sound of alien laughter. They saw the tiny human ship approaching and did not even raise a shield to block it. They let it come, amused by the insect trying to challenge the gods. And that was their first mistake. The small shuttle carrying pilot Sue and Chief Engineer Do broke through the heavy cloud cover. The turbulence was violent. The tiny craft shook and rattled as if it were going to fall apart at any second. Inside the cramped cockpit, warning lights were flashing yellow and red. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and fear. Sue gripped the control yoke with sweating palms. Her knuckles were white. She was a skilled pilot, one of the best in the USA fleet. But she had never flown a mission this hopeless. Usually, she flew escort for heavy bombers. Now she was flying a delivery truck into the mouth of hell. The shuttle had no shields. It had no guns. It only had a strong engine and a hull that felt like thin paper against the void of space. "I have visual on the target," Sue said, her voice cracked slightly. She cleared her throat, trying to sound professional for the bridge crew listening back on the Independence. "The enemy flagship is massive. It's bigger than the stadium back home." Through the front glass, the enemy ship filled the view. It was a terrifying wall of gray metal. Unlike human ships, which were built for speed and aerodynamics, the architect's ship looked like a floating fortress. It had sharp angles and deep crevices that glowed with a sickly green light. It looked invincible. It looked like a god of death waiting to pass judgment. In the back of the shuttle, Chief Engineer Do was working frantically. He was not sitting down. He was knee-deep in wires and cables, connecting his strange metal case to the shuttle's main power generator. Sparks flew every time he stripped a wire with his teeth. He was muttering to himself, numbers and formulas that Sue didn't understand. "How's it coming back there?" Sue asked, dodging a piece of floating debris from a destroyed satellite. "We're getting close. 2 minutes to optimal range." "It's a mess, Du," shouted over the roar of the engine. "The power coupling is loose. I need more juice to the lenses. If I don't get the frequency right, this thing will just be a very expensive flashlight. I need you to keep us steady, Sue. If we jolt too much, the calibrator will break." "I'm trying," Sue snapped. She pulled the stick to the left, banking the shuttle hard to avoid a green sensor beam that swept through the space in front of them. "They are scanning us. I can feel it." On the bridge of the Independence, Commander Jin and Tactical Officer Kang watched the drone feed from the shuttle. The atmosphere was tense. The main screen showed the shuttle as a tiny blue dot moving toward a giant red blob. It looked like a mosquito flying toward a light bulb. "The architects have locked their sensors onto the shuttle," Kang said. His voice was flat, but his hands were shaking. "They are tracking it. Why haven't they fired?" Commander Jin narrowed her eyes. Because they don't see a threat. Look at the telemetry. Du has all the weapon systems offline. The shuttle is running on minimal power. To them, it's just debris or a refugee ship trying to run away. It's insulting, Kang muttered. They don't even think we are worth the ammo to shoot us down. That is exactly what we want, Jin said. She leaned forward. Hold your nerve, Sue. You are almost there. Suddenly the radio crackled. It wasn't the voice of the bridge. It was a deep, synthesized voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It vibrated through the whole of the shuttle and echoed on the bridge of the Independence. The architects were speaking. Attention, human vessel, the voice boomed. It sounded like grinding rocks. Your resistance is illogical. Your largest ships have failed to scratch our hulls. Now, you send a child's toy? We detect no weapons. We detect no shields. Is this a joke? Do you seek to amuse us before your end? Sue felt a chill run down her spine. The aliens were listening. They were watching them. And they were laughing. She could hear the distortion in the signal. It sounded like static hissing, but the pattern was mocking. Do we respond? Sue whispered into her mic. Negative. Jin's voice came back, calm and steady. Do not engage. Stay on course. Radio silence. But the alien voice continued. Your species is primitive. You rely on explosives and crude kinetics. Our shields adapt to your violence. We are the pinnacle of evolution. You are insects. We will not waste energy destroying this tiny craft. We will allow it to approach, so we can study your desperation. It is humorous. Back in the shuttle, Du cursed loudly. He slapped the side of his metal box. Humorous? I'll show them humorous. Sue, I need 30 more seconds. The secondary coil is heating up. We don't have 30 seconds. Sue yelled back. She looked at her radar. The massive enemy ship was opening a bay door, not to fire, but to launch a swarm of small spherical drones. They were interceptor drones used for cleaning up space junk. The aliens were sending their cleaning robots to deal with the human ship. They didn't even use soldiers. Drones incoming, Sue shouted. She grabbed the throttle. They are fast, evading. The shuttle screamed through space, twisting and turning. The spherical drones chased them. They didn't shoot lasers. They simply tried to ram the shuttle, playing a deadly game of pinball with the human craft. A heavy thud shook the ship as one of the drones clipped the wing. Stabilizer is damaged, Sue yelled. The ship spun wildly for a moment before she fought it back under control. We are losing altitude relative to their position. We are drifting too low. Get us back up, Du yelled. He was typing commands into his datapad, his fingers flying. I have the frequency locked. The WAN device is primed. I just need to be within 500 meters of their sensory array. You want me to park this bucket next to their bridge? Sue asked in disbelief. They will vaporize us. They just said we are a joke, Du reminded her, sweat dripping from his nose. They won't fire. They are too arrogant. They think we are nothing. Use that. Fly right down their throat. Sue gritted her teeth. She looked at the photo taped to her dashboard. It was a picture of her family, standing in front of their house in the countryside. She took a deep breath. Hold on to your lunch, Chief. We are going in. She pushed the throttle to the maximum. The engine groaned in protest, but the shuttle surged forward. She stopped dodging. She flew straight at the main viewport of the enemy flagship. It was a suicidal charge. The spherical drones chased them, but they couldn't keep up with the sudden burst of speed. On the Independence Bridge, Kong stood up from his chair. She's going to ram them. She's lost her mind. No, Jean whispered. She's delivering the package. The shuttle rocketed toward the alien ship. The distance closed rapidly. 1,000 meters. 800 meters. 600 meters. The green glow of the alien hull washed over the shuttle, turning everything a sickly color. Targeting sensors are screaming, Sue shouted. They are locking on. I think they finally realized we aren't just debris. 500 meters, Du yelled from the back. Now! Hit it! Sue slammed her fist onto the red button on her console. It was the activation switch for the rear bay. Device activated, Du screamed. Outside the shuttle, the metal case in the cargo bay split open. Usually, a weapon creates a flash of light or a beam of energy. This was different. The Huan projector didn't fire a beam. It exploded with a chaotic storm of visual noise. It was like a kaleidoscope gone mad. Strobing lights of every color imaginable, ultraviolet, infrared, visible light all flashed at once. It wasn't just bright, it was confusing. It was a visual scream. The effect was immediate. The alien ship, which had been silently looming like a statue, suddenly shuddered. The green lights along its hull flickered. The steady hum of the engines wavered. On the bridge, the alien voice returned. But this time, it wasn't mocking, it was distorted. Alert. Input. Overload. Sensory. Error. Unable to compensate. Frequency. Chaotic. The spherical drones chasing the shuttle suddenly stopped moving. They floated aimlessly, their guidance systems scrambled by the massive burst of electronic and visual noise. "She did it," Kang whispered on the Independence. "The signal is jammed. Their sensors are blind." But the victory was short-lived. The alien flagship, though blinded, was not dead. It was like a blind giant swinging its arms in panic. The ship began to rotate erratically. Its hull defense turrets began firing randomly in all directions. "Get us out of here, Sue!" Du yelled over the roar of the projector. "We are too close. The random fire will hit us." Sue pulled the control yoke back hard, trying to bank away. "The engines are stalling." The power surge from the weapon drained the battery. The shuttle was dead in the water. It was drifting, caught in the gravity pull of the massive alien ship. They were sitting ducks. "Mayday! Mayday!" Sue shouted into the radio. "We have delivered the payload, but we have no power. We are drifting toward the enemy hull." Commander Jin watched on the screen. The shuttle was perilously close to the alien shields. The architects were panicking, firing blind. One stray shot could end the mission and the two heroes. "All batteries, lock onto the shuttle's distress beacon," Jin ordered. Kang turned to her, his face pale. "Commander, we can't shoot the shuttle." "We aren't going to destroy it," Jin said, her eyes flashing. "We are going to give it a push. Fire a low-yield concussion beam. Give them a nudge away from that ship." Chief Du gave them a headache. "Now it's our turn to finish the job. Prepare the main railguns. As soon as that shuttle is clear, we open fire on the blind spots." Picking up the shuttle's beacon, Kang said, his fingers dancing over the keys. Concussion beam armed, firing. From the Independence, a blue ripple of energy shot out. It washed over the small shuttle, shoving it violently to the side, away from the alien ship. Inside the cockpit, Sue and Do were thrown against their straps. The shuttle tumbled through space, spinning away from the flagship. Systems rebooting. Sue gasped, fighting the controls. "I have engines. I have control. Get us back to the fleet." Du shouted, clutching his metal case, which was now smoking and melted. "We bought them 5 minutes, maybe 10. That's all we got. We'll take it," Sue said. She gunned the engine, the little shuttle racing back toward the safety of the human line. Behind them, the massive architect ship was spiraling. Its running lights were flashing in random patterns. The aliens were screaming over the comms, their language breaking down into static. The laughter was gone. The arrogance was gone. For the first time in history, the gods were afraid of the insects, and the insects were ready to sting. "All units," Commander Jin's voice echoed across the fleet. "The enemy is blind. I repeat, the enemy is blind. This is not a drill. Weapons free. Aim for the thrusters and the sensory domes. Let's show them what happens when they laugh at us." The war was far from over, but the tone had changed. The humans were no longer fighting a losing battle. They were fighting a fair fight, and that was a fight they intended to win. The chaos in space was absolute. The giant alien flagship, which had looked so majestic and terrifying just moments ago, was now acting like a confused animal. It turned in wide, clumsy circles. Its massive engines flared and then died down, only to flare again in uneven bursts. The green lights along its hull flickered wildly, creating a strobing effect that was disorienting even to watch from a distance. On the bridge of the USS Independence, the crew watched in stunned silence. The tactical map, which had previously shown the enemy ships as perfect, organized red triangles, was now a mess of static and scattered dots. The lead-red triangle was blinking erratically. "Look at the energy readings," Dr. Park said, his voice filled with a mix of awe and scientific curiosity. He pointed at a graph on his screen. "Their shield harmonics are all over the place. They are trying to form a barrier, but the frequency keeps shifting. It's like they are fighting against themselves. Commander Jin stood straight. She felt the heavy weight of command on her shoulders, but for the first time in hours, she felt a spark of hope. The stupid weapon had worked. Chief Engineer Du had been right. The aliens relied so much on their advanced sensors that they had forgotten how to fight without them. "They are blind," Jin said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Tactical Officer Kang, status on the enemy weapons?" Kang was typing furiously on his console. He looked up, a grin spreading across his tired face. "Their targeting systems are offline, Commander. They are firing blindly. Look." He pointed to the main view screen. A barrage of green plasma bolts shot out from the alien ship, but instead of hitting the human fleet, the bolt sailed harmlessly into the empty void of space, exploding against asteroids or dissipating in the upper atmosphere of Earth. One bolt even struck another alien ship, a smaller destroyer that was flying too close. The destroyer's shields flared, and the ship listed to the side, damaged by its own ally. "They can't see us," Kang laughed. "They can't see anything." "Then let's make sure they stay that way," Jin ordered. She turned to the communication officer. "Broadcast to all ships in the fleet. This is Commander Jin. The enemy flagship is disabled. All units, break formation. Execute pattern Delta 9. Target their engine vents and weapon ports. Do not let them recover." The bridge erupted into action. The gloom and despair that had hung over the crew like a storm cloud vanished instantly. They had a mission. They had a chance. "Main railguns are hot," Kang announced. "We have a clear shot at their starboard thrusters." "Fire," Jin commanded. The USS Independence shuddered as its massive magnetic accelerators launched 3 tungsten slugs at hypersonic speeds. There was no beam of light, just a thunderous vibration that shook the deck plates. The slugs crossed the distance between the two ships in the blink of an eye. Because the alien sensors were scrambled by the wand device, the automated defense turrets on the enemy ship did not react. They stayed dormant, waiting for a targeting lock that would never come. The tungsten slugs slammed into the exposed engine vents of the alien flagship. The explosion was spectacular. A bright orange fireball erupted from the side of the gray monolith. Debris spun away into space. The massive ship lurched violently to the side, venting atmosphere and gas. "Direct hit," Kang shouted. "Their engines are down." "They are dead in the water." Suddenly, the speakers crackled again. It was the alien voice, but the smooth, arrogant tone was gone. It was broken, frantic, and loud. Static hissed through the transmission. "Human vessel," the voice screeched. "Cease this attack. We cannot see." "What have you done?" "Your weapon, it is dishonorable. It creates noise. It creates chaos." Jen walked over to the communication console. She picked up the handset. "This is Commander Jin of the Earth Defense Fleet. You thought we were insects. You thought we were a joke. You laughed at our weapon. Who is laughing now? You? Cheat," the alien voice roared. "You use chaos. It is inefficient. It is primitive. Our shields cannot adapt to nonsense." "That is the point," Jin said coldly. "You prepared for a war of logic. You prepared for lasers and missiles. You didn't prepare for human ingenuity. You didn't prepare for the unexpected." She slammed the handset down. "All fleet, continue firing. Take them apart piece by piece." While the Independence engaged the flagship, the rest of the human fleet swarmed the remaining alien ships. The smaller alien destroyers were in a panic. They were used to receiving data and orders from the flagship. With the flagship blind and screaming in panic, the rest of the fleet lost their coordination. They broke formation, drifting apart, unsure of where to go or who to shoot. On the bridge of a nearby destroyer, the USS Victory, Captain Lee watched the spectacle. He was a friend of Commander Jin, and he had also thought Do's plan was crazy. Now, he was watching the enemy fleet crumble. "All guns, target the destroyer at bearing 045, Lee ordered. "They are sitting ducks." The Victory unleashed a volley of missiles. The alien destroyer tried to raise its shields, but without the sensory data from the flagship, its timing was off. The missiles slammed into the hull, tearing great holes in the armor. The alien ship rolled over, spinning out of control. In the cockpit of the small shuttle, Pilot Sue and Chief Engineer Du were racing back to the Independence. They were battered and bruised. The shuttle's controls were sparking, and the engine was making a worrying whining noise. "Do you see that?" Sue asked, pointing out the window. "We actually did it. We actually blinded them." W was panting, holding a cloth to a cut on his forehead where he had hit the console during the escape. He looked out at the burning hulk of the alien flagship. A small, tired smile touched his lips. "It wasn't the weapon, Sue. It was the surprise. They are so rigid. Their minds are like computers. They couldn't process the chaos." "Well, they are processing a whole lot of explosions right now," Sue said. She tapped the thrusters, guiding the damaged shuttle toward the landing bay of the Independence. "Hangar Control, this is Shuttle 1. Requesting emergency landing. I have the chief and he smells like burned wires." "Copy, Shuttle 1," the air traffic controller replied. His voice sounded different now, alive, excited. "Landing bay is clear. Welcome back, heroes. Get down here. The drinks are on the house tonight." Sue laughed. It was a relieved, shaky sound. "You heard him, Chief. Let's hit this bird on the ground." As the shuttle touched down on the metal deck of the hangar bay, mechanics and soldiers ran toward it. They didn't look like men facing defeat anymore. They looked like victors. They cheered as Sue popped the hatch and climbed out. Dew stumbled out after her, clutching his smoking metal case. A young ensign ran up to Dew, eyes wide. "Chief, the commander reports that the alien shields are collapsing. They are retreating. The weapon worked." Dew handed the ensign the heavy case. "Here, take this junk. It's fried. I need a sandwich and a nap." Meanwhile, back on the bridge of the Independence, the battle was reaching its climax. The alien flagship was burning. Its shields were completely gone. The human fleet was carving it up like a roast. The alien transmission came through one last time. This time, the voice was not angry. It was quiet. It was filled with fear. "Humanity," the voice whispered. "We did not know. You are unpredictable. You are dangerous. We will return. We will adapt. But today you have won." With a flash of light that hurt the eyes, the remaining alien destroyers engaged their warp drives. They didn't wait for the flagship. They abandoned their leader. The smaller ships vanished into streaks of light, fleeing the battlefield. The flagship, crippled and alone, hung silently in space. It was defeated. Commander Jin let out a long breath she didn't know she was holding. She slumped slightly against the railing. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her exhausted. "Enemy fleet has retreated," Kang said softly. "The flagship has surrendered. They are powering down their weapons." "Secure the area," Jin ordered. "Send rescue teams to the planet's surface, and get me a damage report." She turned to look at the bridge crew. They were all looking at her. They were dirty, tired, and many were wounded. But they were alive. They were all smiling. "Kang," Jin said. "Yes, Commander." "Next time Chief Engineer Dew suggests a stupid idea," Jin said, a rare smile forming on her lips, "I suggest you listen." Kang laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yes, ma'am. I think we all will." The battle was over. The Earth was safe. The architects had come to exterminate humanity with their perfect technology and their arrogant laughter. But they had forgotten one simple rule of the universe. Even the most advanced machine can be defeated by a monkey with a wrench if the monkey is clever enough. And humanity, it turned out, was very, very clever. The stupid weapon had saved the world. The sight of the burning alien ship was the most beautiful thing Jin had ever seen. The sky was still scarred with smoke, but the sun was finally breaking through the clouds. It was a new day. The silence that followed the battle was heavy, but it was a peaceful silence. For the first time in 24 hours, the alarm sirens on the USS Independence were quiet. The red emergency lights had been switched off, replaced by the standard cool white glow of the overhead lamps. The ship, which had been shaking and groaning under enemy fire, was now steady, floating calmly in the orbit of Earth. Commander Jin sat in her chair on the bridge. She had a cup of cold coffee in her hand, but she didn't drink it. She just stared at the main view screen. The screen showed the burning hulk of the alien flagship. It was a massive, ugly scar in the beautiful blue sky of the planet. It was drifting, powerless, leaking gas and fluids into space. It was a testament to the victory, a monument to the day humanity refused to die. Tactical Officer Kang stood next to her. He was looking at a datapad, scrolling through the reports. He looked exhausted. His uniform was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But he looked happier than Jin had ever seen him. "The cleanup is going well," Kang reported. "The alien flagship has surrendered officially. They have vented their atmosphere and are waiting for our boarding parties. The other alien ships that fled have jumped out of the system. They are gone." "Good," Jin said. Her voice was hoarse. She cleared her throat. "And the fleet? What are our losses?" "We lost the destroyer Liberty and the cruiser Stalwart," Kang said, his voice dropping. "Several other ships have heavy damage, but it could have been worse. It should have been worse. We expected total annihilation. Instead, we have a victory." Jin nodded slowly. "Casualties? Reports are still coming in," Kang said. "But it looks like we can rescue most of the crews from the destroyed ships. The escape pods launched successfully because the aliens stopped firing." Jin put the coffee cup down. "Tell the medical teams to get ready. We are going to have a lot of wounded." She stood up. Her legs felt stiff. She had been sitting or standing in one spot for nearly a full day. "I'm going down to the hangar bay. I need to see the team that made this happen." "Do you mean Chief Du and Pilot Sue?" Kang asked. "Yes," Jin said. "They are the heroes of the hour. I want to make sure they are treated well." "I'll have the bridge commander," Kang said. He hesitated for a moment. "Commander, I was wrong. About the weapon. I thought it was a joke. I almost stopped them." Jin looked at him. Her face was serious, but her eyes were kind. "We all thought it was a joke, Kang. That was the point. The aliens thought so too. That is why it worked. Do not beat yourself up. You fought well. We are alive because everyone did their duty." Kang nodded, looking relieved. "Thank you, Commander." Jin turned and walked toward the elevator. The hallways of the ship were busy. Crew members were running back and forth, carrying repair kits, stretchers, and reports. But as Jin walked past, they stopped and saluted. There was a new energy in the air. The gloom of defeat was gone. These people were not just survivors. They were winners. They had beaten the unbeatable. When Jin arrived at the hangar bay, the scene was chaotic but organized. Mechanics were welding patches onto fighter jets. Medics were treating minor injuries on the deck floor. In the center of the room, a large crowd had gathered. Jin pushed her way through the crowd. In the center, sitting on an ammo crate, was Chief Engineer Do. He was holding a bottle of water, and a medic was wrapping a bandage around his head. Standing next to him was Pilot Sue. She looked tired, but she was smiling, chatting with a group of pilots. When the crowd saw Jin, they parted. The room grew quiet. Du looked up. He tried to stand up, but he winced in pain. "Commander," he said, his voice raspy. "We're back." "I can see that, Chief," Jean said. She walked up to him and looked at the bandage. "Is it serious?" "Just a bump," Du said, waving his hand dismissively. "The landing was a little rough. The shuttle is totaled, by the way. Sorry about that." "Don't worry about the shuttle," Jin said. "We have plenty of shuttles. We don't have plenty of chief engineers or pilots." She turned to Sue. "How are you, pilot?" "I'm good, ma'am," Sue said, straightening her uniform. "Just glad to be on solid ground. Well, solid metal." "You did a brave thing," Jin said, "flying into that formation. It was a suicide mission." "We trusted the chief," Sue said, looking at Du with respect. "He said it would work, and it did." "It was a gamble," Du admitted. "A stupid gamble. But it was the only card we had left to play." Jin looked around the hangar bay. The crew was watching them. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Listen up. Today we faced an enemy that was stronger, faster, and more advanced than us. They had shields that could stop our best missiles. They had weapons that could melt our hulls. They laughed at us. They thought we were insects." She paused, looking at the faces of the young men and women around her. "They thought we would fight them with logic," Jin continued. "They thought we would try to outgun them. But they didn't know humans. They didn't know that when we are backed into a corner, we get creative." Chief Dash built a weapon out of spare parts and light bulbs. It looked stupid. It looked like a toy. But it blinded the enemy. It gave us the opening we needed. She turned back to Du and Sue. "Because of these two, the Earth is still spinning. Because of them, you are all standing here and not floating in space as dust. Give them a hand." The hangar bay erupted in cheers. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was a roar of relief and gratitude. People whistled and stomped their feet. Du blushed, looking down at his boots. Sue laughed, waving at the crowd. Suddenly, a communications officer ran into the hangar, holding a headpiece. "Commander Jin. Commander Jin. Report. The boarding party has entered the alien flagship," the officer said, breathless. "They have secured the bridge. They are transmitting a message. They found something weird." "What is it?" Jin asked. "The aliens. They are confused," the officer said. "They are trying to understand how we did it. They are asking to speak to the engineer of chaos. They want to know who designed the weapon that defeated them." Du looked up, surprised. "They want to talk to me?" "It seems so," Jin said. She couldn't help but smile. "They are probably trying to figure out how to defend against it next time." "Let them try," Du said, standing up slowly. "That device was a one-off. I built it out of a broken navigation array and a disco ball I found in the storage locker. If they want to defend against chaos, they have to become chaotic, and they are too stiff for that." "Get some rest, Chief," Jin said. "You too, pilot. I have a feeling you are going to be very busy tomorrow. The press will want to talk to you. The president will want to give you medals. But tonight, sleep." Aye, Commander," Sue said. Jin left the hangar and headed back to the bridge. The ship felt lighter now. The air was cleaner. She walked onto the bridge, and Kang turned to face her. "Situation update," Kang said. "Ground radar shows that the invasion forces on the planet have surrendered. Without their commanders in orbit, they don't know what to do. The armies of the USA and our allies are mopping them up." "It's over, Commander. We won." Jin sat in her command chair. She looked out at the stars. The aliens had come from out there, from the deep dark. They had come to take the world. "Open a channel to the fleet," Jin said. "Channel open," Kang replied. "This is Commander Jin," she said, speaking to every ship, every soldier, and every pilot. "The enemy is defeated. The architects have retreated or surrendered. You fought with honor. You fought with courage. And today we proved that no matter how advanced the enemy is, they can never defeat the human spirit. Well done, everyone. Well done." She cut the channel. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment. She allowed herself to feel the victory. But she also thought about the future. The aliens had said they would return. They would adapt. They would learn. Next time, they wouldn't laugh. Next time, they would be ready for the tricks. Next time, it would be a harder fight. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, they had survived. "Kang," Jin said, opening her eyes. "Yes, Commander? Tell the kitchen staff to prepare a real meal for the crew," Jin said. "No more ration packs. Break out the good supplies. We are celebrating tonight." Kang grinned. "Yes, ma'am. I'll see to it personally." The bridge crew chuckled. It was a small thing, a good meal, but it meant normalcy. It meant they were alive to eat it. As the Independence orbited the Earth, the sun began to rise over the horizon of the planet. The golden light reflected off the hull of the ship, chasing away the shadows. The stupid weapon had turned the tide. The laughter of the aliens had been silenced, and in the silence, humanity found its strength again. The architects of death had been defeated by the architects of hope, and the name of Chief Engineer Du would be remembered forever. The sun was shining brightly over the city of Washington, D.C. It was a crisp, clear morning, the kind that usually signals the start of a peaceful day. But today, the atmosphere was electric. The streets were packed with people. They were not running in fear. They were standing shoulder to shoulder, cheering. Flags waved from every building. The red, white, and blue colors of the nation draped over the facades of government buildings and storefronts alike. It was a day of celebration, a day of victory. In the center of the city, a large stage had been erected in front of the Capitol building. Rows of chairs were set up for the dignitaries and the top brass of the military. But the focus of the entire event was on a small group of people sitting on the stage. Commander Jin sat in the front row looking out at the sea of faces. Next to her sat Tactical Officer Kang, looking stiff in his brand-new dress uniform. Beside him sat Pilot Sue, who kept fidgeting with the medals pinned to her chest. And in the center of them all sat Chief Engineer Du. He looked uncomfortable. He was wearing a uniform that was too clean, and his shoes were polished to a mirror shine, which was a stark contrast to his usual grease-stained boots. He kept pulling at the collar of his shirt. "I feel like a penguin," Du whispered to Sue. "Why did they make me wear this? I belong in the engine room, not on a stage." "Smile, Chief," Sue whispered back from the corner of her mouth. "The world is watching. You are a hero today. Just wave and don't trip." "I don't want to be a hero," Du grumbled. "I just want to go back to my workshop. I have a new idea for an engine coil that uses sound waves." Admiral Park, a tall man with gray hair and a chest full of ribbons, walked up to the podium. The crowd quieted down. The silence spread from the front row all the way to the back of the masses standing on the grass. The loudspeakers crackled to life. "Friends, citizens, and allies around the world," Admiral Park began. His voice was deep and commanding. "2 weeks ago, we faced the end. The architects, an enemy from beyond our stars, arrived with ships that dwarfed our cities. They brought weapons we could not penetrate. They brought shields we could not break. They looked down upon us and saw only a primitive species, ready to be wiped out." The crowd listened in silence. The memory of the fear was still fresh in everyone's minds. "They laughed at us," Park continued. "They mocked our weapons. They thought our science was a joke. And for a moment, they were right to think they had won. Our missiles failed. Our lasers failed. We were on our knees." Park paused for effect. He looked over at Chief Engineer Du. Every head in the audience turned to look at the stage. "But humanity has a secret weapon," Park said, smiling. "It is not our technology. It is not our strength. It is our minds. It is our ability to look at a problem and find a solution that no one else sees. When logic said we would die, a small team of brave souls chose chaos." The Admiral gestured to Du and Sue. "Chief Engineer, Du and Pilot Sue did not try to beat the aliens at their own game. They did not build a bigger gun. They built a smarter one. They built a device that turned the enemy's greatest strength, their perfection, against them. They blinded the arrogant beast with a flash of human ingenuity." The crowd erupted. The applause was like thunder. It washed over the stage. Du turned a bright shade of red. Sue stood up and waved, a bright smile on her face. Commander Jin stood and saluted. "They called it a stupid weapon," Park shouted over the cheers. "They laughed at it. But it worked. It saved our world. Today, we honor the crew of the USS Independence. Today, we honor the spirit of Earth." The ceremony continued. Medals were pinned. Hands were shaken. The president gave a speech, but Du wasn't listening. He was thinking about the alien ship floating silently in orbit. He was thinking about the data they had recovered. After the ceremony, the group was taken inside the Capitol for a private meeting. The room was cool and quiet, a relief after the noise of the crowd. High-ranking officials and scientists sat around a long table. "We have analyzed the captured data," Dr. Park said. He was the head science officer from the fleet, and he had been working non-stop since the battle. "We have translated the final logs from the alien flagship. It is fascinating." "What does it say?" Commander Jin asked. She was sitting at the head of the table, a glass of water in her hand. "The architects are terrified," Dr. Park said. He slid a tablet across the table. "They are a hive mind of sorts. They share information instantly. Their entire battle strategy is based on predicting the enemy. They use advanced algorithms to guess what the enemy will do next. When Chief Du activated the Huan projector, the chaos blinded them." "Blinded them physically, yes," Kang said. "We know that." "No," Dr. Park shook his head. "It blinded them strategically. Their computers could not predict the chaos. They could not calculate the next move. To a species that relies on perfect logic, a random, chaotic attack is not just a threat. It is a nightmare. They call us the unpredictable ones now." Du leaned forward. "So, they are afraid of us?" "Very much so," Dr. Park said. "They are retreating to the edge of the solar system. They are sending messages back to their home world. They are warning their people not to engage Earth without new protocols. You have bought us time, Chief. Perhaps years. Perhaps decades." "That is good news," Admiral Park said. "We can use that time to rebuild the fleet. We can upgrade our shields. We can prepare for the next time they come. We need to do more than just build bigger guns, Jin said. Her voice was firm. We need to change our doctrine. We relied on standard warfare for too long. The architects adapt. If we fight them the same way twice, they will win. We need to keep being chaotic. We need to keep surprising them. She looked at Du. Chief, I am giving you a new assignment. I want you to head a new division. Special projects. I want you to build more stupid weapons, things that make no sense until they work. Can you do that? Du blinked. He looked at the commander, then at the admiral. He had expected to be reprimanded for destroying a shuttle and using a weird device. Instead, he was being given a blank check to invent more crazy things. I can do that, Du said, a slow smile spreading across his face. I have a lot of ideas. I have an idea for a magnet that pushes instead of pulls, and I have an idea for a sound cannon that makes people dance. Kang laughed. Dance? Really? It disrupts the inner ear, Du explained seriously. It ruins their balance. It would be very effective against ground troops. See? Jen said, smiling. This is exactly what we need.
Thanks for watching my video. Like, subscribe and share.